Today on Rebel Then King, we're talking about throwing knives. Welcome, adventurers. I want to talk about one of my favorite new hobbies and sort of a mainstay and a trope of fantasy tabletop and basically any fantasy or non-fantasy genre that involves weapons of any kind, and that is throwing knives. I want to take a look at how accurate they actually are, how they are depicted, whether that actually adds up to what I have experienced in real life, kind of go through a tutorial of how at least I learned to throw knives, and see whether the rules of TTRPGs, especially Pathfinder 2nd edition, actually match what these things can do. Starting out with the knives that I am throwing. These are Smith & Wesson throwing knives that I just bought on Amazon, I think. They're relatively inexpensive, they're relatively light, they are one piece of steel, they are sharp on the end only. This is their purpose. A few brief safety tips because these are knives, they are sharp. Even if you get hit with the other side, they will hurt. I will miss, they will bounce. I'm throwing at foam archery targets, and I also have cardboard on the floor here to stop rebounds from coming at me. I have popped a bike tire with a rebound before, so that gives you an idea how much damage potential these have, even when they're not on the initial throw. As far as throwing goes, range increments. This works out quite well with Pathfinder 2nd edition, actually, because in Pathfinder 2nd edition, the range increments sort of work just in units of 5. That is the default square size. And you know what? This happens to do just about the same because timing your rotation with the knives is important. I am at about the 10-foot range, and I say about because it's going to differ a little bit for everyone. I'll show you that now. I kind of know where to put my heel here, so I'm going to see if I'm in the right spot, and I'm going to give it a throw. All right, pretty good. Dead center. A little high, but not bad. As far as the technique goes, there are multiple correct ways to hold a throwing knife. I throw with a loose grip, and I do mean a loose grip. This is just kind of jiggling in my hand. I'm not squeezing it at all. I am just resting it in my hand, and I'm placing my thumb on the spine of the knife. On the inside, you can see my pinky is just lightly on the tip of the knife, not behind it, because that would actually potentially cut me, but just here on the side. And that is to keep the knife from moving too far, this way. What we want to do is impart some spin onto the knife, but we don't need to try really to do that. This thing is going to spin. You were throwing it in an overhand motion. It's got weight on the end. It's narrower in the middle. It's going to spin. That is reason number one why I hold it loosely, because the harder you grip it, the more spin you're going to give it, and you don't want to do that. So I hate missing because it makes terrible sounds, but I'm going to try one normal throw here. And now I'm going to grip it tight and see what happens. I whiffed. Too much tension, too much spin, it's not going to work. So again, nice loose grip, keep the thumb on the spine. And the other thing is, it's such a loose grip that you are not really grabbing and releasing. So I'm not going like this. I'm not going grab, release, grab, release. It is like this to that, this to that, this to that. That is it. If you've ever seen videos on how trebuchets or even slings work, it's very similar. You are not, in those weapons, you are not gripping the projectile and then releasing a projectile. It is resting, and at the sort of natural release point, it's going to release. You're doing the same here. It is more or less flying out of my hand at the natural release point. And a couple more tosses from this range because it's fun. That one still counts. So let's talk about range. I am standing right now 8.5 feet from the target. And this is the range that, for me, with this technique works. I'm going to show you how important range is. All right, so let me try another from my preferred range here. One more time. Okay. Sometimes you miss even from your preferred range, but now I'm going to take half a step back. Seriously, just half a step here. Okay, sometimes the range works at multiple ranges. In fact, that might have been better. Hey, I guess I'm doing better than I thought today. I'm going to take another half a step back and we'll see how that works. All right, now I'm like barely in frame. That was hilarious. We're going to take a look at it. That last knife throw that was out of range landed perfectly sideways. You see that? A perfect imprint. That means it was rotating multiple ways. It might have been a bad throw overall. But what I want to show you here, I'm going to try to stick a few intentionally at different working but not ideal ranges. I'm going to get a little too close. Too close. Okay, that was good. If you go back and look at that, what you're going to notice is the way that the knives hit can be off. So that one kind of hit like this, right? Where the handle was down, the blade was up. That is a sign of under rotating. So that means that it came in and it only made it to about there. The other thing you can do is, of course, over rotate. I'm going to try now to over rotate by adjusting my range and speed. Perfect. I actually got that one to stick, which is exactly what I wanted. Now you can see that the blade is down. That means that the knife came in, went too far, and it still worked, but it landed like that. The straighter it is, the more accurate you are going to be, the more penetrating power you're going to have, and well, it's what you want. So let's go back to the preferred range. Still a little over rotated. That is just about perfect. And I think I'm throwing a little hard and fast, which is why these are slightly over rotated, but it's still pretty good at that range. Now let's take a look at other ranges. Now I am going to be at the point blank or sort of 5-foot range. I like to find this range by doing kind of a 2-step process. 1, imagine that you're stabbing the target. 2, step back, and boom, this is your range. Now, when you hold the knives at the different ranges, you are going to alternate whether you were holding by the blade or the handle. At all those previous, I was holding by the blade. And that's because it was doing a half rotation. The 10-foot range is what you call a half rotation, because it's leaving your hand like this, it's leaving your hand like this, right? And then it's going half rotation and sticking the target. This is a no rotation. I'm holding it. I'm not placing my thumb on the spine because just the shape of this knife, it doesn't work out quite so well. I'm just holding loosely again, and I'm just throwing. It looks like this. And as you can tell, it's a lot easier to have power and accuracy at this range. This is often the range that I start people out on. I've had a few friends that come out to practice or to learn, and this is where you can kind of build confidence and build the throw. I should talk about the throw a little bit. I am doing a baseball kind of style throw where I am taking my arm, cocking it back, I am stepping, I am planting, I am rotating, and I am going over, and I'm releasing about here, I would say, usually. That's kind of where it's naturally falling out of my hand. So it's not a huge step necessarily. We'll go over huge steps in a bit, but it is. And it is a quick motion. I'm gonna just use my hand so I don't accidentally throw a knife here, but it is just a chop. You can actually practice by kind of going, and it's not a huge follow through. Unlike a baseball where you want to like point, with a baseball you're often taught, throw and point at what you're throwing at. I don't do that. You just let it follow through naturally. And you also don't want to put extra emphasis on the follow through. If you kind of like that, you're going to over rotate. It's really just let it leave your hand. And then I actually kind of stop my hand intentionally, but the momentum is going to carry through. You can't instantly stop like that, but it goes, I kind of stop there, which also leads to the projectile, the knife, flying out of the hand. A couple more times at this range because it is fun. Okay, more ranges. This is about 15 foot. Let me measure it. So if you remember, 5 feet was a no rotation, and I held it by the handle. 10 foot was a half rotation, and I held it by the blade, which means that 15 feet is going to be a full rotation held again by the handle. And this actually is, I'm right at my preferred spot. It is like 14 and a half feet exactly. So very close to 15 feet here, which again is one of the range increments in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, every 5 feet. All right, I'm kind of not in frame, but it's getting wide. So here we go. Oops. Sometimes the danger of going from different ranges is you forget to adjust your grip. I was just holding it by the blade again, which was not going to work. Handle. Remember, by the handle. Okay. Not too bad. An over and an under rotation. Inconsistency happens more at bigger ranges, not surprising. All right. I'm pretty happy with that because that range is by far the most difficult for me. You get a little less control when you don't have your thumb on the spine. And again, because of the shape of these knives, I can't really do that because it kind of changes the angle of the knife in my hand. But let's do a few more. A few more at 15 feet. Low, but okay. I'll take it. Now this is going to be really tough to show and the camera angle is going to be awful, but there's literally not enough space. I'm going to go to the back of my garage, which is going to be a full 20 feet. I love throwing at this range, but it is difficult. We are going to use a thumb on the spine again, holding by the blade again, a full rotation and a half from this range. We'll see if it gets picked up by the microphones, but you can hear it like whiffle through the air. You can literally hear that movie sound effect of it going, which is so fun. I do use a big, slower wind-up step in this, and that is mostly to help me aim. With the others, I'm staying more upright and I'm just kind of whipping. This, because little inconsistencies add up with greater distances, I do it kind of like a true like baseball pitcher. Let me, I'm focusing in, I'm trying to hone in on exactly what I'm doing and like that. Okay. Let's see how this goes. Low, but it's stuck. Not bad. So as you can see, or maybe not, it is difficult to be accurate at this range, but I'm still pretty happy with 3 sticking. A little low, but good rotation. A little high, but good rotation. Bad rotation. For the record, those were pretty good overall. I'm going to try for a nice group in a 3 still. A little high, but sounded good. That one was great. A little low, but great. At the 20-foot range, that is a pretty good grouping. Okay, so we've thrown knives from 4 different ranges, which happen to be the 4 different range increments within the first range increment of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition throwing knives. And I missed a few, sure, but I've also only been doing this for maybe half a year on weekends. So if you were a trained martial, like a fighter or something, you'd be much better at this than I am. And you can see it works pretty well. I think if I was to go further, first of all, I'd have to go into the street and throw knives into my garage, which I don't want to do. Second of all, I bet I could maybe get 25 feet, maybe even 30 occasionally. Beyond that, absolutely not. The next thing though that I want to talk about is power. So what I'm going to do is stab, a melee stab to this bit of board here. I'm going to wear a glove so it doesn't hurt my hand, and we're going to see if I am able to get it to stick into the wood. Ready? A little bit. Ow, that one bounced. That one also bounced. I think the first one was in a soft spot or something. Okay. So you can get it to stick a little bit, but it hurts from melee. Let's see what happens with a throw. Same knife, same exact knife, gloves off this time. I'm gonna throw not at the target, but at the wood. This is gonna be loud, and due to the slight range differences, I often miss this the first couple of times. Here it goes. Hey, I got it the first time. Now, I should have measured, I suppose, but if you can see, that is significantly more stuck than the melee was, and it goes in no problem. So that does mean that the whole adding strength to damage, I think actually works out quite well in the rules of Pathfinder. And it also means in other fantasy or not fantasy that you see where, someone uses a throwing knife and it goes straight through someone's head, or, there's some brutal, awesome kill. It's actually kind of realistic because, no one's ever doubting that you can take a knife by hand and stab it through a relatively soft target. And I just demonstrated that a thrown knife actually has more power than a held knife. You could maybe argue with the held knife, you can do more on follow through, sure. But these things definitely have some power to them. How fast can you throw these accurately with power? In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, on your turn, you have 3 actions, and each action is supposed to represent about 2 seconds, which means if I can throw one of these every 2 seconds, then the rules of Pathfinder actually work out pretty well. So let's see what happens. Alrighty. 1,002, 1,003, 1,004. So yeah, closer to about 1 a second, though I do need to make sure that I have them staged in my hand correctly. And that also means that if I was to go at different ranges, like throw 2 knives here and 1 knife there at a different range, I would have to have the knives staged in my hand in different ways, which could result in, stabbing your own hand, which I've kind of accidentally done before. The other thing to talk about comparing the real world throwing here compared to Pathfinder is Pathfinder has a concept of the multiple attack penalty, which means the more often you attack in a given round, the less accurate you are. I generally feel like my first throw is less accurate than the others because sometimes I'm a little bit off range and then I adjust, but let's see how 3 go now. Well, that one was dead center, so the first throw being the most accurate, that adds up. That's still a hit. And that was really close to the first one. So to kind of recap here, starting with how to throw knives, like the real ones in real life, not in fantasy games. Secure a good space for it. I'm indoors so that they don't fly and go into a neighbor's yard or anything. I don't have anything super valuable in here. Again, it did pop a bike tire once. They're all the way over there, so hopefully they're out of range now. I have some cardboard on the floor to help with ricochets and to protect the floor, though now that I look at it, I actually see ding marks all over the place, so oops. And then remember, starting at 5 feet, you want to throw with your hand on the handle. At about 10 feet, I do thumb on the spine, though I used to do thumb off the spine. That works too. There are other grips like holding it like this that are also acceptable. Even holding it straight and throwing with a straight arm is acceptable. But I do a baseball kind of throw where I start by going back, step, I adjust the size of the step depending on where I am, and rotate through, which looks like this. And then I'm not going to move the camera again, but remember at 15 feet, again, by the handle, that is a rotation and a half. I'm sorry, that's a full rotation at 15 feet. And then at 20 feet, again, by the handle, and that is a rotation and a half. Do these work in real life like they do in the rules of Pathfinder 2nd edition? I would say mostly. I've never thrown these at a real soft target, but I have thrown them at pumpkins, and well, they did some damage there. You saw it stuck pretty well into the kind of hard plywood that I have there. They're fairly accurate. I can throw them fairly quickly. So remember, they are a finesse weapon and an agile weapon in the game, which means that you don't have as bad of a multiple attack penalty, which I think we saw. It is a well done weapon in the game. I don't use it as often as I should, but I do have a new campaign coming up where I have a ranged or a thrown weapons specialist build that I'm very excited about. Catch you next time, adventurers.